Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of Andrewsfootball.com. I got a request from one of my subscribers to do an all-nude episode, and Josh, I have to turn down that request because Andrews Football will always be family friendly. There is no profanity, no nudity. You can watch and listen to this at work. If you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It should be right there, and all your wildest dreams will come true. Scientifically proven, this channel will make all your wildest dreams come true. Now, here is how my preseason breakdowns go. I break down what I like, then I break down what I don't like, but stay tuned to the very end of the show where I break down the over-under against Vegas and how you can make some money on betting on the Bucs and if you should bet on the Bucs. Now, let's jump into what I like here. First thing I like is the coaching hires. Not just Bruce Arians, the head coach, but he brings back his former defensive coordinator, Todd Bowles, who they worked together with in Arizona. Now, if you watch the Amazon special, All or Nothing, a season with the Arizona Cardinals, a lot of the coaches, the assistant coaches, position coaches that were with the Arizona Cardinals are on this Tampa Bay coaching staff, and that's big. If you watched Hard Knocks last year, you could tell that the assistants and the head coach didn't get along. You know, there was a lot of conflict in there, and I don't think that was good for team chemistry. As you could tell, both the head coach and offensive coordinator were fired. So that's something that you're not going to have a problem here, is that because they've all worked together and they've all had success before. So that's something that's really important, because your coaching staff is not only really good, you've worked together. And another thing that I like, it's the second thing I like, is that you bring in your defensive coordinator, Todd Bowles, excellent hire. Then you go ahead and you give your first 5 picks in the draft to the defensive side. You're an offensive guy. You're going to work with what you have, and then you give your defensive coordinator what you need. I really like that because one of the things, again, I'm going to touch base on the show. Whoops, I hit one of my lights here. The season with the Arizona Cardinals is that if you watch that show, you could tell the players and coaches really respect and like Bruce Arians, and this is the reason why players and coaches want to work for him. This is also another thing. You can see this if you look at the draft. First 5 players in the draft, all defensive players, all for Todd Bowles, bringing in his new scheme. So this is really big, and it's something that I think that he'll like, because now I don't know Todd Bowles personally, but I think this is a guy who deserves another chance to be a NFL head coach, and I think he'll get one. Maybe he wants to coach in college. Maybe he has no interest in being a head coach. I don't know these things, but I do know he got kind of a bad deal with the New York Jets, and I do think he'll have an opportunity to be another NFL head coach, and this is a great opportunity for him. Third thing I like about Tampa Bay Buccaneers, your offensive skill position talent, especially Mike Evans. I mean, for those of you that don't know, last year, I got tongue-tied there. Fitzpatrick started the first couple of games, and they went back and forth between Winston and Fitzpatrick. And despite of all that, Mike Evans, 86 catches, 1,524 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And that's with rotating quarterbacks. O.J. Howard, who's battled injuries, hasn't been as productive as a lot of people thought he would be. But in 24 games in his career, now keep in mind that's missing 25% of the starts, 11 touchdowns and 997 yards. I mean, 11 touchdowns, that's almost a touchdown every other game. That's not bad. And 997 yards, it's about 50 yards a game. That's not terrible numbers in a 16-game season. That would basically be 8 touchdowns, 500 yards. Did I do that right? Yeah. No, 800 yards, my mistake. That's not a bad season. And keep in mind, this guy's got all the athleticism in the world, so it's very likely that if he can stay healthy, those numbers are just going to skyrocket. And look at Chris Godwin. I mean, you had Deshaun Jackson there last year, so you're option number 3. Number 4, if you want to say Howard was third option, which you can argue that, but 59 receptions, 842 yards, 7 touchdowns, and that's with Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson. I mean, this is a guy I just absolutely loved out of Penn State, and he's going to be the number 2 guy. So, I mean, this is a team that's got a ton of athletic talent. on the skill position. Another thing is that this may not pan out at all, but you got Rashad Perryman coming back to Florida. He played college ball at UCF. This guy had all the athletic ability in the world. It hasn't panned out early in his career. Injuries, a case of the dropsies, but you got a guy in Bruce Arians, an offensive mind. This is a guy who you're risking nothing bringing him on, but he has all the athletic talent in the world. Now, for you fantasy football fans, this is a guy you want to draft very, very late because he's got all the potential in the world. This is a guy who could explode, but I wouldn't recommend. I would say like your last 2 rounds. Take a flyer on this guy because he's got all the athletic talent in the world. They are going to throw the football quite a bit. This is a guy who really could surprise in a lot of leagues. Keep in mind, this is a guy who might also not make the team. So now, the last thing I'm going to touch base on here is as far as skill position talent, you got Jameis Winston. I mean, that's the main reason Arians is here because Arians is a quarterback whisperer. He worked with Ben Roethlisberger, and then when he took over the Arizona Cardinals, Carson Palmer had almost an MVP caliber season, I think at age 400. So actually, I think it was 36, but he had a huge resurrection in his career. And when I look at Jameis Winston from a physical standpoint, he's very similar to both Carson Palmer and Ben Roethlisberger. Big, strong quarterback, phenomenal arm talent, big, powerful arm. And that's the offense that he kind of runs. He's going to run a throwing downfield type of offense, which is perfect for Winston, especially with the skill position talent that you have. So that's something that I really like. Keep in mind, they also picked up Blaine Gabbert. This is a guy who had a ton of athletic potential. I watched him at MU, and he was chosen 10th overall. I think it's the 2012 draft. Maybe it was 2011. But this is a guy whose career never panned out. This is an excellent opportunity for him working with Bruce Arians, backing up Winston to resurrect his career. If he wants to be an NFL starter, you're in the perfect spot right here. So just to recap here, here's what I like. I like the coaching staff, not just the head coach, but Arians and a lot of the assistants. They've worked together, had success together. That's a great thing. Next thing you do is that the day after you're hired, you bring in Bowles, give him his guys. You brought your first 5 picks in the draft. First 5 picks in the draft, you give on the defensive side. Let Bowles have his guys. I think that's huge. And the third thing I really like is the offensive skill position talent. Now, what I don't like about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is that when you went to the NFC Championship game in Arizona, a large part of that success was due to the fact you had David Johnson, one of the best running backs in the league. And this offseason, you either didn't or you couldn't get a running back. Now, I liked Ronald Jones out of USC, but he barely looked at the field. And this is a situation where they needed running back help. Your coach was going to be fired. He was a very high second round pick, and you didn't really want to use him, or he's injured. I don't know the whole story, but I know that he had like 23 carries or something ridiculous like that. And so that's not a good sign. And so, you didn't improve your running back core at all. Another thing is that your offensive line, there's a lot of money invested in this offensive line. It's not very good. And so what they're planning on doing is just bringing in a new coaching staff and trying to maximize the talent in your offensive line and running back core, but you didn't really add any talent to it. So that to me is kind of a red flag of things that are not good going into the 2019 season. And third thing I don't like is that Jameis Winston, for those of you who know the story, he was drafted under Lovie Smith. They brought in Dirk Cutter as the offensive coordinator. He looked really good his rookie season. So Dirk Cutter was feared because he wanted to be a head coach. So he was feared that he was going to leave Tampa. They fired Lovie Smith, promoted Dirk Cutter to new head coach so he could work with Jameis Winston. Basically, since Jameis Winston entered the league, he's worked with Dirk Cutter. He's worked with the same offense for the last 4 years. And now you got a brand new scheme. And on defense, Todd Bowles, not keep in mind, I'm fully aware most teams play nickel, but there's still a massive difference between the 4-3 and the 3-4, especially the 4-3 scheme that Tampa's running and the 3-4 scheme Bowles is going to run. You have a way different type of scheme. You have way different types of personnel. For example, Gerald McCoy, you're probably your best defensive player. He's gone. You're bringing in Dominican Sue, who's a much better fit for this particular defense. But now you have a new scheme. You're going to have a bunch of new faces, a bunch of new players. You're going to have to rotate players into different positions, doing a lot of things different. And then you have that plus the fourth thing, and I kind of merge these together here, but I already mentioned Winston getting a new scheme that he's known for 4 years. But 2 years ago when he was on Hard Knocks, he came across really, really immature. And last year, Deshaun Jackson was public in saying Winston doesn't really know the offense. I mean, this is an offense you've been in for 4 years and you don't know it. And then you got your receiving core calling you out on not knowing it. That's not good. So here's a guy who was said by another one of your own players that you didn't know the system. Now you got a new system. And keep in mind, 2 years ago, he really came across extremely immature. How fast is he going to process this new playbook? Because on defense, that's a total resurrection right there. So now here's the thing. Long term, I think Winston and Arians is going to be gold. But for 2019, how much of this playbook is Winston going to be able to absorb? You know, how many audibles is he going to be able to call? How many things are he going to be able to do because of his knowledge of the system? It's going to be limited, and especially if after 4 years he didn't know the system that he had under Dirk Cutter all that well, at least according to Deshaun Jackson, who's no longer there, by the way. So to recap on what I don't like about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they didn't add to their running back talent. I'm not a fan of their offensive line. You also have a new offensive and a new defensive scheme. And with the defensive scheme, it's totally different. They're running a 4-3. This is going to be more of a 3-4. So you're going to have a lot of more personnel changes on that defensive side. And the number 4 thing I don't like is the Winston struggles. I mean, this is a guy who was benched last year. When you're the first overall pick and 4 years later you're being benched, that is not a good thing. So now, I told you, stay to the end of the video where I'm going to tell you if you can make some money on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So here's the advanced class. Here's the money-making part of the video. The over-under on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is 6.5. If you want to bet over 6.5, it's even money right now. All right, so if you bet $100, you would win $100. Now, the under, and I'm using Westgate, and different casinos may have different things, but more than likely they're all going to be pretty similar. You can try some things online, but that's a different subject for a different day. I'm using Westgate. Under 6.5 is negative 120, which means that you have to wager $120 to win 100. Which means that the action is being placed on the under. And here's the thing, Vegas nailed this. This is the absolute perfect number, but because the action's being placed under 6.5, I actually think that this number could drop to 6. So if you are going to place action on this, I would suggest do it now or do it somewhere where you're getting 6.5. I don't like 6 at all. But, you know, this is a team that went 5-11 last year. They're completely reinventing themselves, so 6 could be a real challenge. So I think that Vegas has it, and I think the public has it right. I would recommend taking under 6.5. Now, see, I like Bruce Arians, but 6 could be a real challenge. And if it drops 6, I would avoid this like the plague. And the reason why I would avoid 6 is because I really don't like 6.5. See, to be honest, I would really kind of avoid this team because they have some real winnable games early. They open up the season at home against San Francisco. A third game of the season, the Giants. They faced the Panthers, their weakest divisional opponent, twice in the first 6 weeks. So you have that with the 49ers and the Giants. I mean, realistically, this team could be 3-3 after the first 6 games. And then you have winnable home game. Winnable, I thought it was 2, but a winnable home game against the Cardinals, and then at Jacksonville. So I mean, you really could be at around 5 or 6 wins pretty easily. So I don't love 6.5, but if I was going to bet this, I would take the under. If it drops to 6, I would avoid this team completely. So That's my breakdown of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you're a subscriber to Andrews Football, you already know you're one of the greatest people on planet Earth. But if you're new to my channel, there's this button right here. I blew it up so you can see it. It's a little bigger. Plus, I got some playlists on the side. Check out some of my other content here. So look at this button. Look at some of this button. And bam! Hit that. Hit one of those buttons. Any one of those buttons. If you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber. Become one of the greatest people on planet Earth. Stay tuned till Friday. We're going to break down the New York Giants. I'll see you Friday.